The introduction of 8K on the X4 raises the legitimate question of whether the X4 is the better choice than the Ace Pro in every respect. And I can say straight away that this is not the case. We'll see why in this video. Today I will show you in turn the 5 particular strengths of the X4 compared to the Ace Pro, but also the 5 strengths of the Ace Pro compared to the X4. At the end I've defined 5 types of users and will tell you who would I recommend the Ace Pro to and who would I recommend the X4 to. And you'll see one of these two cameras is a great choice for you. This video contains no paid sponsorship. The cameras were provided by Insta360, but the content is entirely based on my own opinion and experience. As a 360 camera, the X4 of course has a very special strength compared to the Ace Pro. You can freely select the optimum framing in post. This means you don't have to worry about the right framing during the recording. And that's a huge advantage, especially if you're filming yourself, as it's not always possible to set the right framing during recording. However, this advantage and this freedom also comes with a disadvantage. Every 360 shot has to be edited in post. You cannot use the recordings directly and without editing. There are now several options in the Insta360 app to set the framing quickly and easily. There is also an excellent auto tracking feature. The effort required for reframing is therefore limited. But you should be aware that this step is always necessary for 360 recordings. If you occasionally need a conventional video clip that you want to share immediately, the X4 also offers the so-called single lens mode. This allows you to shoot in 4K and at up to 60 frames per second with just one of the two lenses. Such a shot therefore does not need to be reframed and the camera behaves like a traditional action camera in this mode. However, the special strength of the X4 is the 360 mode. In 360 mode, the X4 can shoot in 8K at up to 30 frames per second. But as you still have to reframe these shots, the result of your 360 shot is not an 8K image, but a relatively strong crop of this recording. Due to the high resolution of 8K, however, the reframed clip is still relatively high resolution. The video is exported in 4K, but the real resolution is closer to 2.7K. And that brings us to the great strength of the Ace Pro in this comparison. The Ace Pro cannot take 360 shots, but it's also capable of shooting in 8K, albeit only at 24 frames per second. But this is an 8K recording that does not need to be cropped, and the recordings in 4K are also very detailed and sharp. And in a direct comparison, you can see the difference to shots from the X4. This applies to a comparison with reframed 8K 360 clips, as well as to a comparison with single lens recordings from the X4 in 4K. In both cases, the footage from the Ace Pro contains more detail and looks better. Of course, how noticeable the difference is also depends on which device you are watching your recordings on. While the higher resolution is barely noticeable on a smartphone, the difference is more noticeable on a large, high-resolution monitor. But the 360 mode of the X4 not only offers the advantage of reframing. Another decisive advantage of a 360 shot is that the selfie stick automatically disappears from the shot. You don't have to do anything. The invisible selfie stick effect is automatic, and this effect gives your shot a very special look. The shots look very special and many people will ask you how it was even possible to take this shot. It's interesting to note that with the Ace Pro, the selfie stick can also be removed from the shot via the app by using a special effect. However, this feature cannot be compared with the invisible selfie stick effect of a 360 camera. Rather, in the case of the Ace Pro, the stick is erased from the shot in the same way as when editing an image in Photoshop. This is only possible via the app and for shorter clips, and the result does not look nearly as good as the invisible selfie stick effect of the X4. On the other hand, the Ace Pro offers another very important advantage that is important for action cameras. It can take high-resolution slow-motion shots in 4K. In 4K, the Ace Pro can shoot at up to 120 frames per second. And if you often want to film action-packed scenes, this is a big advantage and simply looks cool. With the X4 in 360 mode, you have to reduce the resolution to 4K for 100 frames per second. Since you still have to reframe a 360 recording, you will then get a slow motion recording in a greatly reduced image quality. The shot is still very usable, especially for social media. However, it cannot keep up with the image quality of a slow motion shot from the Ace Pro. In single lens mode, a maximum of 60 frames per second is available on the X4, but it doesn't matter whether resolution or frame rate. I think you could clearly see from these comparison shots that the biggest difference between the shots from these two cameras lies elsewhere, the very different field of view. As a 360 camera, the X4 has a much wider field of view than the Ace Pro. This gives the shots a completely different look. Of course, the extremely wide field of view also leads to distortions, but it also enables a particularly immersive look, which is especially important for action shots. And no matter what I'm going to say at the end of this video and in connection with the buying guide, I think you should also make a choice between these two cameras by deciding on one of these two looks. Because both are also action cameras, I consider the particularly wide field of view to be a strength of the X4. But whether you prefer the extremely wide angle of the X4 also depends on your personal taste and what you want to film with your camera. Both cameras are marketed as action cameras. It must therefore be said that the body of the Ace Pro is somewhat better suited for using it as an action camera. There are several reasons for this. The protruding lenses of the X4 represent a weak point depending on the intended use. They can be damaged relatively easily under certain circumstances. Insta360 offers lens guards to prevent damage to the lenses. The standard lens guards for the X4 are included in the packaging. However, depending on the lighting situation, they can have a negative effect on the image quality. Unfortunately, the lens cover on the Ace Pro cannot be removed by the user, but in the case of damage, it can be replaced relatively easily by Insta360. This is even free of charge in the first year after purchase. Many consider the flip-up display of the Ace Pro to be a potential weak point. Personally, however, I had no problems with it. The display is relatively robust and can be easily folded down when taking dangerous shots. The X4 is slightly heavier than the Ace Pro. With 20 grams, however, the difference is not that great. The difference in form factor is more decisive. The elongated form factor of the X4 can be a disadvantage depending on the mount. It is well suited to using the X4 on a selfie stick, which is also the optimal use for a 360 camera. The elongated form factor, on the other hand, is more of a disadvantage if you want to attach your camera to a helmet or a chest mount. And there is another aspect you should be aware of. Both cameras are waterproof up to 10 meters, and that's without an additional housing. But to be able to take 360 shots underwater, you need a special dive case. Without a dive case, lens stitching does not work underwater, and you can only use the X4 underwater in single lens mode without a dive case. The Ace Pro also has a magnetic mount. This allows you to quickly and easily remove the camera and attach it somewhere else. The X4, on the other hand, has a 1/4 inch thread on the underside, which of course also allows you to attach the camera relatively flexibly. All in all, however, I would say that the body of the Ace Pro has a number of advantages for an action camera. The extremely wide field of view, the invisible selfie stick effect, and the reframing offer in combination the biggest advantage of the X4 for me. You can take particularly creative and unusual shots with the X4. You can capture angles that are only possible in this form with a 360 camera, and your shots will often amaze people, and many will wonder how you managed to take them. The X4 therefore has decisive advantages, especially if you are creative. It's simply fun to try something new and take shots that are rarely seen in this form. But the Ace Pro, with its large and excellent image sensor, naturally has another advantage in terms of image quality. The dynamic range of the Ace Pro is visibly better than the dynamic range of the X4. The Ace Pro therefore does a better job of retaining details in the very dark and especially the very bright areas of the image in difficult lighting conditions. Both cameras have an HDR mode. While the HDR mode on the X4 is only available in 5.7K and also leads to disadvantages in terms of image quality, this is not the case with the Ace Pro. Here, the HDR mode has been perfectly integrated into the standard video mode. The high dynamic range is therefore one of the particular strengths of the Ace Pro, not only in comparison to the X4, but also in comparison to other action cameras on the market. And it's not just the dynamic range. Depending on the lighting situation, the Ace Pro's image can look significantly more contrasty. In even lighting conditions, the colors and exposure of the two cameras are very similar. If it is very bright or the lighting conditions are difficult, however, there can be clear differences. This is also because the X4 has to set an optimum exposure for the entire 360 image. However, the X4 has another advantage over the Ace Pro that many people are not aware of. It has a visibly better image stabilization than the Ace Pro. You can see here in direct comparison that the image is better stabilized in the shot of the X4. This is despite the fact that the Ace Pro also has a well-functioning image stabilization. But as a 360 camera, the X4 also benefits from its extremely wide field of view. At 1/1.3 inches, the image sensor of the Ace Pro is significantly bigger than the two image sensors of the X4. And this not only has advantages in terms of dynamic range, but also when shooting in low light. With pure video, the Ace Pro has its own recording mode for recordings in low light conditions. Here, the image noise is efficiently removed and the recording still looks relatively good even in low light. But I'm surprised at how well the X4 can keep up in low light. I think this is due to the fact that in the course of the reframing in the app, the X4's low light shots are once again heavily processed and improved. However, you should know that you shouldn't shoot at 8K with the X4 in low light. In low light, you should shoot at 5.7K and at a maximum of 30 frames per second. And even though the X4 achieves surprisingly good results in low light, I would say that the Ace Pro has the advantage here. The colors look a little better and the images from the Ace Pro also have a little less image noise. And especially in difficult lighting conditions, the better dynamic range of the Ace Pro is often noticeable. And you can see that when it gets very dark, the X4 can no longer keep up. You should also be aware of 3 other important differences between the two cameras. In 4K 30, the Ace Pro is able to shoot for 1 hour and 35 minutes until the battery runs out. The X4 can shoot in 5.7K 30 for 2 hours and 21 minutes. But if you want to get a comparable image quality, you should shoot in 8K 30, and it can only do that for 1 hour and 15 minutes. Both cameras had no problems with overheating here in the office at around 20 degrees Celsius. In summer, at very high temperatures, however, I would say that the Ace Pro in 4K will have fewer problems with overheating than the X4 in 8K. And there is also a difference in price. The X4 costs $500, while the Ace Pro is slightly cheaper at $450. You can find a link to both cameras in the video description. By the way, if you use the link in the description, you will usually also receive a free gift. Although they are two very different cameras, they have a whole range of features in common. Both cameras feature gesture control, the AI Highlights Assistant, and they support similar accessories such as the GPS preview remote or Bluetooth headphones. They can be operated via the same app and support similar features within the app, although it should be noted that several effects of the app are only intended for 360 recordings. I think you now know the most important strengths of the two cameras in a direct comparison. There are 2 things you should remember in particular. The shots of the X4 have a completely different look than the shots of the Ace Pro due to their particularly wide field of view. And you shouldn't forget that you have to edit all 360 shots from the X4 in post and determine the optimal framing. So you should be willing to do this step, because the single lens mode of the X4 doesn't offer the many advantages of the 360 mode. I think you have now developed a feeling for which camera might suit you better. I will now tell you which camera I would personally recommend to which user group. If you have little experience with cameras and don't yet own an action camera, then I would recommend the Ace Pro. It's not that the X4 is particularly difficult to use, but reframing is an additional editing step and the many shooting modes and setting options of the X4 are perhaps more suitable for a more advanced user. If on the other hand you already have some experience with cameras, especially action cameras, and perhaps already own an action camera, albeit an older one, then I would definitely recommend the X4. The reframing, the invisible selfie stick effect, and the special field of view simply allow you to take particularly creative and innovative shots. In my opinion, the added value is therefore significantly greater than the slightly better image quality of a new conventional action camera. If you mainly shoot for social media, then I would recommend the X4. For social media, the highest possible resolution is not so important. The many creative possibilities of the X4 allow you to take shots that make you stand out from the masses. You can also freely choose between a horizontal and vertical format when shooting in 360 mode. The Me mode of the X4 also enables 360 shots in which the camera automatically keeps the subject in the center of the frame. No reframing is necessary, and there is also the invisible selfie stick effect, ideal for vlogging. If on the other hand you are looking for a camera for shooting sports, then in my opinion it very much depends on what sport you are doing and which mount you want to use for it. If you mostly plan to shoot with a chest mount, for example when mountain biking, then I would recommend the Ace Pro. It's better suited for mounting on a chest mount. A 360 image also offers hardly any advantage for this type of recording. If on the other hand you tend to film with a pole, perhaps when skiing, then I would definitely go for the X4. A 360 camera is the ideal choice for shooting with a selfie stick, if only because of the invisible selfie stick effect. Incidentally, there are special mounts for all kinds of activities for both cameras. As a travel camera, camera and for the family, I would prefer a very simple device and therefore go for the Ace Pro. You don't have to reframe the shots. The Ace Pro is a little easier to use and the flip-up display also allows you to film yourself and your family. The risk of damage is also somewhat lower than with the X4. However, the X4 is of course also well suited as a travel camera, especially as the extremely wide viewing angle allows you to get a lot in the same frame. As I said, you can find a link to both cameras in the video description. There are currently often special offers for the Ace Pro in particular. If you are interested in how the Ace Pro or the X4 compare to the GoPro Hero 12 or the DJI Action 4, then take a look at my corresponding comparison videos. And give me a like as feedback if this video was interesting for you. There will be more videos about the X4 and the Ace Pro, so stay tuned and see you next time.